Every June, the Stanley Cup is raised, and the boos rain down, not for the losing team, but for one man, Gary Bettman. To owners, he's the architect of billion-dollar growth. To fans, he's the face of lockouts and greed. Why do hockey fans love to hate him? For over 30 years, this has been the soundtrack, a massive, deafening chorus of boos. It follows one man to podiums in arenas all across North America. He gets booed at the annual NHL draft. He gets booed when he presents the Stanley Cup. The footage changes year to year, but the wall of sound, that universal expression of fan disapproval, is always the same. So, how did one man become arguably the most hated figure in hockey? How did the league's first ever commissioner, hired to modernize the sport, become a walking symbol of everything fans think is wrong with it? This is the story of how Gary Bettman became hockey's public enemy number one. When Gary Bettman left his job as senior executive at the NBA to become NHL commissioner on February 1st, 1993, his mission was clear: grow the game, sell it to the American market, and bring labor peace to a league constantly battling instability. Yet, within 2 years, the league went silent. The biggest charge in the case against Bettman, the one that has defined his reign, is the lockouts. 3 times under his leadership, the NHL has shut its doors, alienating its fan base and grinding the sport to a halt. The first was 1994. The owners, with Bettman as their frontman, wanted a salary cap to get players' salaries under control. The players said no way. The result was a bitter 103-day lockout that chopped the season down to just 48 games. It was a messy public fight that left a sour taste in everyone's mouth. But that was just the warm-up act. The second lockout was the big one, the one nobody thought could actually happen. By 2004, the owners claimed that players' salaries had skyrocketed, eating up an average of 76% of league revenues, and that the NHL had lost a reported $273 million in a single season. Those numbers came from the owners and were disputed by the players, but the battle line was drawn. Bettman, on behalf of the owners, again demanded a hard salary cap tied to revenue. The Players Association refused to budge. The standoff dragged on for 310 agonizing days. For the first time in the history of major North American pro sports, an entire season, 1,230 games, was canceled. For the first time since the 1919 flu pandemic, the Stanley Cup wasn't awarded. The league was in tatters. When the dust finally settled, the owners had their salary cap. The league got what it called cost certainty, but it came at the price of its fans' trust. Then, proving history has a dark sense of humor, it happened again. In 2012, another fight over how to split revenues. This time, the owners wanted to cut the players' salary from 57% to an even 50-50 split, triggered a third lockout. This one also shortened the season to 48 games and cost players a significant chunk of their salaries for the year. 3 lockouts, 2 shortened seasons, and 1 totally lost. For fans, it was a recurring nightmare of billionaire owners and millionaire players fighting over money, while the people buying tickets were left with nothing. And the one constant, the public face of every single shutdown, was Gary Bettman. The logic was simple: get teams into big American media markets to land bigger national TV deals. And so, under Bettman, the league expanded or relocated teams to places like Florida, Dallas, Nashville, and Atlanta. But for many traditional hockey fans, especially in Canada, this American-first approach felt like a punch to the gut. Early in Bettman's tenure, 2 beloved Canadian franchises, the Quebec Nordiques and the original Winnipeg Jets, were moved south. The Nordiques went to Denver, becoming the Colorado Avalanche. The Jets were sent to the desert, becoming the Phoenix Coyotes. To many Canadian fans, it felt like a profound betrayal. It seemed the commissioner cared more about chasing a Southern dream than protecting the sport's heartland. That Southern dream often turned into a nightmare. The Atlanta Thrashers, an expansion team added in 1999, lasted just 12 years before they had to relocate back to Winnipeg, creating the new Jets. The sting of the original loss, however, remained. And then there's the endless saga of the Arizona Coyotes. For decades, the franchise was a lightning rod for criticism, plagued by ownership chaos, bankruptcy, and a desperate search for a real home. The league, and Bettman personally, poured incredible resources into keeping the team in Arizona, frustrating fans in hockey-hungry markets like Quebec City. The situation became a full-blown embarrassment when the team was forced to play in a 5,000-seat college arena. Finally, in April 2024, the drama concluded. The NHL brokered a $1.2 billion deal to move the team's players and staff to Salt Lake City, creating the new Utah Mammoth. Of course, not every gamble failed. The Vegas Golden Knights have been an enormous success, and the teams in Tampa Bay and Carolina have both won the Stanley Cup. But for every success story, there's a struggling franchise propped up by the league, while a passionate, proven hockey market is left waiting. It created a narrative that Bettman favored American expansion over Canadian tradition, an accusation that has followed him his entire career. Now, if you want to understand the defense of Gary Bettman, you only need to look at one thing: money. From a business perspective, his reign has been a staggering success. When he took over in 1993, the NHL's annual revenue was around $500 million. By the 2022-23 season, that number had exploded to over $6 billion, and projections suggest it could top $7 billion in the near future. Franchise values have gone through the roof. Back in 2004, not a single team was worth $1 billion. By 2023, more than a dozen were. This explosive growth was fueled by the very things fans often hated: the salary cap. Born from that disastrous 2004-05 lockout, gave owners predictable costs and, in theory, created a more competitive balance. The expansion into new markets was key to finally landing the massive national TV deals the league had always dreamed of. For years, the NHL's TV presence in the U.S. was a joke. After the 2004-05 lockout, the league lost its deal with ESPN and ended up on the Outdoor Life Network, later known as Versus. It was a desperate move that relegated the league to a niche cable channel many people didn't even get. But Bettman played the long game. That deal eventually led to a 10-year, $2 billion agreement with NBC in 2011. A decade later, he secured the current landmark deals with ESPN and Turner Sports, reportedly worth a combined $625 million a year. These deals put the NHL back in the mainstream on channels like ABC, ESPN, and TNT, with huge streaming options. So the central conflict of Bettman's legacy becomes clear. He did exactly what the owners hired him to do. He made them incredibly wealthy. He stabilized the business, expanded the league, and secured the media deals that had escaped the NHL for generations. But does the financial growth justify the cost? For many, the financial arguments crumble when weighed against the final and most serious charge against Gary Bettman: his handling of player safety and misconduct. This issue exploded with the horrific Chicago Blackhawks scandal. In 2021, an investigation revealed that in 2010, video coach Brad Aldrich had sexually assaulted a player, Kyle Beach. The report detailed how high-ranking team executives learned of the assault during their Stanley Cup playoff run and did nothing. They chose to bury the scandal rather than disrupt their chase for a championship. The hockey world was horrified. The league's response, however, was seen by many as shockingly weak. Bettman fined the Blackhawks $2 million, a fraction of the profits for a billion-dollar organization. In a press conference, his tone was widely seen as defensive, more focused on protecting the league from liability than on the victim. To fans and critics, it looked like his primary concern was damage control, not justice. This wasn't seen as an isolated incident. Critics point to a pattern of the league being reactive on player welfare instead of proactive. For years, the NHL was accused of downplaying the devastating long-term effects of concussions and CTE, even as former players suffered. His cautious approach to eliminating fighting and his deeply unpopular decision to bar NHL players from the 2018 Winter Olympics added to the criticism. These incidents feed a perception of a commissioner who acts less like a steward of the game and more like a lawyer for the owners. He is seen as someone who prioritizes revenue and legal protection above all else, above fans, above tradition, and in the most damning cases, above the well-being of the players themselves. So, we come back to the boos, that visceral, unwavering chorus of disapproval. It's the sound of 3 lockouts that stole hockey from its most devoted fans. It's the sound of Canadian cities losing their teams. It's the sound of frustration with the league that sometimes feels more like a corporation than a sport. And it's the sound of anger over scandals that have shaken the game's conscience. Gary Bettman's legacy is a paradox. He is the architect of the modern multi-billion-dollar NHL, a league with financial stability that was once thought impossible. He has been named Sports Executive of the Year and was even inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. But for millions of fans, that success will forever be tainted. They see a commissioner who has consistently put the interests of 32 owners ahead of the millions who live and breathe the sport. So, the ultimate question remains: does the league's financial success justify the cost to the fans and the soul of the game? What do you think? Is Gary Bettman the shrewd businessman who saved the NHL, or the commissioner who sold it out? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to see more deep dives into the biggest stories in sports, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Hey hockey fans, you can also follow my blog at https://tedtalkshockey.com, and remember to keep your stick in the ice.